Hello. In this video, I wanted to share 4 tips for recording better videos with your cheap action camera. I'm going to define a cheap action camera as a camera that costs $50 or less because while you can spend several $100s on an action camera and even between $50 and $200 on a cheaper action camera, there's a lot of products on Amazon that are $50 or less, and I'm talking today about how to really maximize the video quality on the product that you have in front of you. I'm not going to ask you to buy something very expensive. With whatever you have, for the most part, there are ways to ensure that you're going to have better video quality rather than worse video quality. So I'm here to show you how, having owned around 16 cheap action cameras for around $50 or less. So let's get into the video. You don't have to use this particular camera. This is one I purchased recently. This is just going to serve as our example when I'm talking about video settings and things like that, but I'm not asking you to have this camera as a requirement. This is just one example of a camera that I purchased for around $45 or a little bit less. So the first thing I'm going to say, which I don't really need to turn on the camera, but I'm just going to talk, is if you'd like to have better quality on a cheaper action camera, $50 or less, my recommendation is to record when there is more light rather than less light. Maybe that sounds obvious, but I'm just going to say that on some of the cheaper action cameras, there really is a decrease in quality if it's darker, and especially when it's very dark. A lot of cheap cameras just simply will not record good videos if there is less light, if it's cloudy. So when it's sunny, you might actually have much better video quality and a much better chance of having a clearer picture. So record when there's more light, when it's sunny. That's the first thing. The second thing is to film underwater, and I'm actually going to show you a few examples of underwater footage recorded with a similar camera to this one, very similar price, around $45, and I took it on vacation recently. Not this one, but this one would probably perform similarly. I have a camera which is very similar to this. I took it on vacation, and the underwater footage looked great. And for some reason, I'm just going to say that with the cheaper action cameras that I have, for some reason, I don't know why, the underwater footage usually looks much better, in my opinion, than the footage out of the water. So my second tip is to record underwater if you can. The underwater housing is not going to guarantee 100%. Not going to guarantee 100% that there won't be any leaking into in the underwater housing. However, if you spend $50 or less, why not take it in the water if you're on vacation, or if you just want to record in the water wherever you are? Because if it gets damaged, it's okay because it's a cheap camera. But the resulting footage underwater, especially if it's sunny in the water, like in the ocean or the pool, it can look awesome. So that's my second tip. You can get better video quality by recording underwater as long as there's no leaking, and I cannot guarantee that. But the underwater housing that I usually try are pretty good, so hopefully it will work out well for you with whatever camera you have. So the first step is to record when there's light. Second tip is to record when underwater if you can. The third tip I'm going to say is a lot of the cheaper cameras, the ones that are $50 or less, most of them don't have image stabilization. At that price range, when you pay $60, $70, $80, now you're probably getting image stabilization, which, if you're walking around while filming, should allow you to have stable video, which is not shaking like that. Which really, on these cheap cameras with no image stabilization, it really is disastrous. On some of them, if you're walking around, it's impossible to follow. So assuming that your camera either has no image stabilization or does not have good image stabilization at that price range, of course, then my advice is to put the camera on a surface while you're recording, or just hold it as still as possible and don't walk around, because even a little bit of shake makes the video hard to follow. I can tell you that from experience. So just hold the camera very still, move it very slowly to maximize the video quality. Don't shake it too much, not even a little bit. That is my third tip. Just if you're recording, try to hold it as still as possible if you do not have image stabilization. That'll give you better video quality, or at least put it on a surface if things are moving by the camera. That'll look much more professional, because again, even a little bit of shake on these cameras with no stabilization really kind of ruins the picture quality a little, because people cannot follow. Trust me, there's a huge difference between good image stabilization and no image stabilization. So that's my third tip. Just keep the camera steady, really just move it slowly, and then you should be good. My fourth and final tip is, and again, I'm going to show you some underwater footage in the second part of this video if you're just curious to see what it's like when a $45, something like that, $45, $50 action camera is placed in the water and it's recording when it's sunny. Went on vacation recently and have some footage of the ocean. with a very comparable camera to this one. So feel free to go to the next part of this video if you'd just like to see some sample footage of the beach and the ocean, just to show you that if you follow these tips, holding the camera still, it's sunny weather, recording underwater maybe, and then the last tip, which I'm going to show you right now, you should have hopefully better video quality with the cheap action camera that you have. So my last piece of advice really is going to be, like I said, I'm talking about these less than $50 cameras, is for the video resolution, don't necessarily choose the highest resolution, because some of these cameras really like to advertise, oh, 4K, 4K, 4K. On the cheaper cameras, the ones $50 less, let's say between $30 and $50, they like to advertise that, but more often than not, if you go with the highest video setting, in this case it's 4K, there will be a loss of some frames and the video quality will look choppy, not very smooth. It will look better quality, but we don't like to have video that's not very smooth. So I usually take it down a little bit to not the highest, instead of using the highest video setting, resolution setting, I will use usually 1080p 60 frames per second, or you can also use this one 2.7K 30 frames per second. My rule of thumb is on the cheaper action cameras, I usually do not use the highest setting because sometimes it just doesn't look very good. Might look a little bit choppy. And again, that's just been my experience with the $50 or less cameras. It's really more of a marketing thing, in my opinion. When you don't have smooth video, I don't see what the point is, because things just look a little bit choppy. So that's my favorite setting, 1080p 60 frames per second. Just because the default might be 4K, it doesn't mean you have to use that. You can always go to the resolution settings and then click and then try a different setting, a lower setting, so 2.7K, 1080p 60 frames per second. That's my favorite. And you can, on cameras where it records good video, where it's done correctly, it can look very good. So that's my fourth and final tip. You don't have to use the highest setting, highest resolution setting on this camera for videos. Same with photos. So that's been my video, how to record better videos with your cheap action camera. This is just an example camera. I'm not asking you to buy this one. I just had this one handy. I have a lot of cameras, a lot of cheap action cameras. So I'm just going to show you some underwater footage if you're just curious to see what it looks like. So when it's done properly, using these tips, just from my experience, the footage can look very good. And the conclusion really is that you don't have to spend $100, $200, $300, even $70 or $80 on an action camera if what you're going to film really doesn't require that. So if you if you want to be walking around while filming, yes, you probably need image stabilization for sure. Very good to have if there's going to be a lot of movement while you're holding the camera, yes. But otherwise, if you're just curious to see what you might, if you might like a cheap action camera, just buy a cheaper one first, $50 or less. Do your research, of course. And then you might find out that you don't necessarily need to spend more money if it suits your needs. Thanks for watching. Some underwater footage will follow with a comparable camera to this one, just to show you that you can have very good quality for $50 or less if you choose the right camera. So as always, do your research, read reviews, and look at reviews on YouTube. Thanks for watching this video, and have a nice day. How to record better videos with a cheap action camera.
what was it?